Hi there, my name is David Batsoffen and I host a blog called Travel and Things. And I've instituted a In Conversation With section to this blog. And in conversation with me today is Ben Coley. Ben, it's great to see you again. It's been, what, almost 10 years since we last spent time in the bush together.
Yeah, hi David. Thanks very much for inviting me on. Yeah, lovely to catch up. Yeah, we were chatting earlier. We can't remember how long ago it was, but we did spend a fantastic few nights in Botswana with some incredible leopard sightings, from what I remember.
I do remember it was 10 leopards in 4 days. But
something like that, yeah, in a few hours. It was amazing, amazing trip, that one, yeah.
But that's not why I called you or why we're having this chat. I want to chat to you about this. This is an area that I know very little about. I can look up at the night sky and go, oh, look, there's Orion's belt, and there's the Southern Cross. But after that, I'm on my own, literally and figuratively. Now, along comes your book. Tell me a bit, firstly, let's talk a bit about your background. Has it always been looking upwards, or is this just part of your whole career in guiding?
Well, it's a bit of both. I was born and raised in England. You can probably still tell the accent hasn't quite faded away just yet. And I came over here about 15 years ago, but prior to that, even back in England, I was lucky enough to grow up in the countryside. I always had an interest in nature. That's how I ended up over here. And I had a particular interest in the stars and astronomy. I had a little telescope when I was younger. And perhaps a bit more of an interest in it than the average person. And then obviously when I came to South Africa around 2006, I didn't really give it too much thought from there. The whole sky was upside down as to what I had learned. But, you know, being a guide and being fortunate enough to have the opportunities that I had, I got to spend hours and hours under African night skies with guests for various lodges. And you know, I realized a lot of people were interested in astronomy, but a bit like you said yourself, where do you start? It's quite an intimidating topic. A lot of people are put off by it because it's space and physics and you know, big numbers and big dimensions. But that's not the point. What you need is somebody to just sort of show you the ropes, and then you can do it yourself. So yeah, I had lots of guests who were interested, and that sort of re-sparked the interest in me. And I always had a sort of a second wind, if you like, of relearning the stars from the southern hemisphere.
There is a gentleman here in South Africa, I won't mention him by name, who keeps saying there are billions and billions of stars. So it's very daunting. You look up at an African night sky and you have the Milky Way, and like me, you can recognize Orion's belt, and then where do you go from there? And unless you've got somebody who really knows their stuff, it's very difficult to interact with a night sky that is that vast, and it makes you feel so minute in the general scheme of things.
Well, that's the whole point, and I think that's synonymous with being on a safari. I mean, especially now in the current climate that the world finds itself in. I don't really want to go into to these problems too much here, but you know, people come on safari. Well, 20 years ago, maybe, and I'm speaking from my own opinion here. 20 years ago, people came on safari to see animals and take photographs and to tick it off a list and say they've done it. Now, and I've seen this shift over the last sort of 15 years of being in the industry, people have a much more holistic approach to guiding and to safaris and to why they come. And they come for peace, they come for reconnection with nature, they come for that holistic aspect that perhaps wasn't always a major part of a safari holiday. And I think astronomy fits into that so well. I mean, you mentioned, we talked about the African night sky. Not only is the southern hemisphere a little bit more exciting to look at than the northern hemisphere in terms of things that you can see with a telescope and binoculars and so on, but the sheer lack of light pollution in most game reserves, which is where, of course, guides are applying their trades, makes it even more amazing to look at. But the downside of that is more stars means more confusion. And again, you need somebody to just give you here's your starting point, and from here you can find all these other constellations and other things that you want to look at.
Now, I want to actually talk about FGASA and why you brought this book out. But for people who think that this, although it says advanced astronomy, If you think this is a thin book, it's not, people. I've had this book for a few days now, and I've tried to go through it. And I think I've got stuck on Leo and Pisces. And after that, I've been waiting for you, Ben, to talk me through this. How many pages?
Yes, the book probably did turn out. Yeah, it was a bit longer than was intended, but just to give you a bit more of the background, this is actually the second edition.
Right.
The first edition of the qualification was released 2018, just kind of very quietly. It was never made a huge fuss made out of it because it was a new thing, and we were very much just sort of testing the water. And we listened to some of the feedback that came back from members, and some of the feedback was that it was a little bit excessive in terms of science and a bit difficult to understand, especially if you weren't going to attend some form of training. So I took that on board, and things changed for me in terms of career. I finished in the bush full-time in the middle of well, I'm going to have to work backwards now, it'll be 2020. So yeah, sort of late 2018. I came back and home and now run this business on a full-time basis and do a lot of freelance guiding, training, and assessing. Yeah, so I'm trying to think actually what I'm trying to get to, but the point of the matter is that yeah, we took on board that feedback, and then I realized as well that especially having just come out of a few years of working for various FGASA training providers, and we spend so much time trying to educate student guides into how important it is to communicate with the guests and the holistic side, and it's not all science. And I took that to heart and pretty much ripped up the manual and rewrote it. Sure, I've kept a lot of the science information has to be in there, otherwise you'd never be able to have a discussion and understand it fully, but I have counteracted that with an awful lot more of environmental and cultural references in terms of astronomy and how the traditional African tribes saw the stars and the cultural beliefs associated with celestial phenomena and things. I think that's the really interesting part of it, the world that will grasp people.
Now, for people who are in lockdown at home, I mean, to be out in the bush now would be phenomenal, or in a small town where there's very little light, where there's very little light pollution. But for people who are stuck in Johannesburg, for instance, they can step out into their gardens if they have, or onto a balcony. Does the winter sky vary widely from the other seasons, or what could they keep themselves occupied of an evening looking upwards?
Well, absolutely you can if you know what you're looking for. Like, it's going to be more difficult from a light polluted city, but it's not such a bad thing to learn the stars in a fairly light polluted area, or at a time of full moon where the sky is actually quite light, because what that does is wash out a lot of the less significant stars and features, so you're just seeing the main ones, and that's actually much easier to learn the pattern. I mean, don't forget, humans are pattern recognition species. We see pictures of faces in houses because of windows and doors. That's how we learn. That's just how we've evolved. And so if you are going to look up in light polluted skies, you'll still see, unless it's terrible, but you should still see the main stars. Those constellations are those constellations, and particularly the zodiacal constellations, because they are some of the most prominent stars and shapes in the sky. And obviously what you're going to see is dependent upon time of year and time of night. But assuming that most people aren't as antisocial as I can be sometimes and are going to stargaze between, say, 7 and 10 p.m., then yes, what you're going to see in winter is completely different for what you're going to see in summer. But winter is the best time to do it. With the climate of South Africa, we have clear skies for months on end. And add to that two other factors. Number one, that the winter skies for us hold the most fascinating objects to see. We have the core of the Milky Way, which out in a non-light polluted area is spectacular in its own right. And then you've also got the fact that it's cold. So wrap up warm, but cold air is good, especially for viewing, because it means less humidity, less water vapor, and less stuff for the light from those stars to have to fight its way through to reach your eyes.
I have to say, you talk about full moon, and it's lovely being in the bush. It's stunning being in the bush under a full moon. But as you say, it washes the stars out. But I did a sleep out with a particular training organization some while ago, and we got to sleep. When you're in the bush, you tend to sleep early. There's nothing else to do. I fell asleep and I was woken by one of my colleagues snoring, but beyond loudly. And I thought, we've slept for a while. It's probably 2 o'clock in the morning. I can deal with this. I look at my watch, it's 10 o'clock. I figure it's going to be a long night. But luckily, I had most of my camera gear with me, which included remote timers and a tripod. And the sky was spectacular, specifically the Milky Way. And I thought, if I'm going to be awake, rather than going to kick him in the head to keep him quiet, let me do some night photography. And I spent 3 hours from like 10 to midnight, or maybe just beyond, taking pictures of the night sky, and at least keeping me from killing him.
Well, you see what I mean. Looking at the stars is therapeutic. Evidently,
it
you
is
needed
indeed
it that night. but I think without making too much light out of it, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There is something, and I talk about this in the manual as well. I'm not the one to explain why or how. No one really knows. But there is something within, I don't want to say all people, but let's say the majority of people, that we are drawn to just stare up at the sky. If you've had a bad day, things are getting on top of you, you go home, and all of us do it without even noticing. Even if you go outside, you have a beer on your stomach or whatever it is you're going to do out there, you're on your own and you just look up and you forget about other stuff and you lose your thoughts and your imagination runs free, which it probably hasn't done since you were a kid because you're so worried about your kids and tax and money
everything
and
else
and life in general, that we've completely forgotten how to imagine and how to, perceive perhaps things that aren't obvious in front of our eyes now. So it's a brilliant opportunity to let your soul free.
Now, you mentioned earlier about looking at the night sky through a telescope, and behind you is a rather imposing looking piece of equipment. Not everybody needs something like that to look at the night sky, do they?
No, this is my baby. This is somebody dubbed it the Hubblet because it's a mini Hubble.
I like that.
It's a Meade GPS telescope, so it has to go through a bit of tracking, but it knows exactly where it is after you've aligned it. And then I call it lazy man's astronomy, really, because once it's aligned up, I've got a control pad, and I can say I'd like to look at Jupiter, and the whole thing moves, fully automated and points at what I want to look at. I mean, some people duck to get out of the way of it. I think they worry it's a missile silo or something. But this is my baby, and this is the showstopper, I suppose, if you like, because it can show you incredible views of stuff that you simply cannot see with the naked eye: gas clouds and birthplaces of stars, the bands of Jupiter, the rings around Saturn, some of the moons of other planets. If you embrace what you can see through it, I think it's a humbling experience, certainly. But this is not necessary. If I'm honest, I use this far less than I do just naked eye viewing and binocular viewing, because specifically of the type of thing that this manual was designed for is for guides. And of course, not every guide has access to a nice telescope to show people the stars. So it would be a bit pointless to do the whole manual purely based on that. So when I go out and I do evenings with guests and I do training for FGASA, we probably only do one evening out of 3, maybe even 4, where we focus with the excuse the pun, on the telescope. We do the rest of it with, can you find these objects and what can you say and communicate to guests in order to make it more interesting. What I really want to move away from was and this is what I saw for a lot during my early years of guiding, was guides would stop at a drink stop or after dark, they've got their fancy laser pointer, they go, there's the Southern Cross, South is over there, that's Jupiter, that's Saturn, let's carry on. Where's the next level of information? Where is the wow moments? And hopefully this manual is packed full of those wow moments to take it to the next level.
I would be impressed if you could use that telescope to find me the 12 Hasselblads that are still lying on the moon, that were left behind by the various people that landed on the moon. I can't believe they bring back rocks, but they leave $1 million cameras lying there.
Well, who knows what else is lying up there? But no, unfortunately, I keep looking for the flags and things, but I haven't found them yet through the telescope.
Don't do that, Ben. I want to believe that those moonwalks actually took place and weren't filmed on a backlot at MGM or something like that. that the conspiracy theory.
I hope that it's true. I believe that it's true. I think it's the spirit of human discovery. And, you know, it's topical now. There's big talks of sending humans into space via SpaceX and other projects by Boeing and places. The first privatized space trips are potentially happening in the next few months. So yeah, it's a big time. It still amazes me that it was 50, 60 years ago that we put people up there, and it was kind of, well, we can do it, we won't bother anymore. It's a bit of a shame, but now there seems to be a new what's the word I want? A new surge to go and explore again, which is great.
But can you imagine, if you think about the technology back in '69, whenever it was that Armstrong stepped onto the moon, the technology then and the technology now, they could literally climb into a car and drive to the moon, basically. The moon is no longer a real destination. Now Mars is the destination, because it's
well, yes, and Mars is again very tough. Could find there. Yeah, we can do Mars in a few months. It's just rather expensive. The problem is coming back.
Well, it's 8 months to get there. But then, as you say, it's coming back that's the issue. How do you get back? You can't.
Well, there are some interesting ideas, and I don't want to go too off topic, but obviously I like this sort of stuff.
Right.
But there are some interesting ideas, because they have found ice on Mars, and ice, if you break ice down, it is hydrogen and oxygen, when hydrogen and oxygen are the main components of rocket fuel. Right. So if there is a way to extract that ice and then separate those compounds and make rocket fuel, maybe you can come back. But it's too heavy to carry enough fuel to get home again. That's the problem at the moment.
Let's have a look at some of the contents of the book. And let's start at the very beginning. As Mary Poppins said, it's always a very good place to start. So planning a night under the stars. Is there more to planning a night under the stars than just, let's go out for a walk and we'll see what we can see? Is there something that you actually physically need to do in order to make the evening an eventful one for the guests?
I think it very much depends on the way you want to do it. Obviously, the idea behind this manual was to arm guides with the ability to stop and do an entertaining and informative 15 minutes to half an hour stargazing presentation, if the guests are, of course, interested during a safari. But it also is designed to set up guides at lodges to actually offer a full-fledged couple of hours under the stars as a standalone activity, and of course to be able to discuss issues around the dinner table and around the campfire. So planning a proper activity, there are things that need to be taken into account. We've mentioned a couple of them already, i.e. time of the evening, what moon phase is it, that's going to dictate what you're going to be able to look at. Of course, time of year, the temperatures and so on, the other equipment that you need to bring with. You want to have different eyepieces if you've got a telescope, and different filters, what type of telescope, what type of mount, depending on your goal. Is it a photographic based activity you want to run, or purely an observational activity? And then probably the most important thing, bearing in mind that this is designed for guides working in Big 5 areas, is of course safety. One has to be careful standing in the middle of the darkness whilst showing people the stars, to also just keep an eye around you. I've been doing this for a few years, and I'll leave it up to you if you want me to regale you with tales.
I was about to ask you, tell me a tale, Ben. Tell me what's happened. You're standing out in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden you hear.
Well, probably the most worrying one was a couple of years ago. I'd gone out, and it was just one of those evenings that you think is destined for failure from the beginning. I had to take my little Toyota Taz onto the reserve because I didn't have access to a Land Rover, and you can imagine that car is not designed for bush roads as is. So I'm bumping my way through to a nice open area. I set up my telescope, and then I thought, well, I'm going to go and take some long exposure photos, and then I'll come back to the telescope. It was open, very open, but obviously you need to keep lights off. And I found this lovely dead tree, probably about 20 meters away from the road, so not far. Parked my car, walked in, had my head torch on, set up the camera, and then of course I'm taking 25, 30-second exposures, so I've got the lights off. But I've seen and I can hear there's impalas around me, and I can see some wildebeest over there. So I know that I'm going to have alarm calls if a predator was to appear in the area. So anyway, so tra-la-la, I'm sitting there and taking my photos, and I just heard something, and I thought, no, that's bigger than an impala. I better just check. Turned on my little to watch. And so I'm here, my car's, I'm just trying to here, and about equidistant to me, staring at me is a black rhino. And I've got one little dead tree between me and it, and it's about 30 meters to me and him, and about 30 meters to me and my little car. So I have to sit there, do I run to the car? But if he decides to come for me and hits the car's ending up over there somewhere as well. Or do I shimmy up the tree and hope for the best? So I sort of shouted and clapped at him and went for shimmying up the tree. But thankfully he turned and disappeared, and I didn't see him again that evening. But it was a nice reminder to keep your eyes open.
Well, this is the thing, that evening that I alluded to earlier, we had two leopards calling, and I think the snorer kept the leopards away because we had them to the south and the east of us, two males, literally calling across where we were spending the night out. We found their tracks in the morning. But it was very interesting between snoring and the sky and the leopards, and it was wonderful.
What a wonderful experience. Sorry to jump in there, Dave. I want to reiterate what you just said there, because to me, being able to offer an experience like this on a safari, what we've just discussed is it's the USP, it's the uniqueness of it. What better way than to learn about Bushman tales of the stars and what you're looking at, whilst at the same time being serenaded by a lion roaring in the distance, or a crack of a branch from an elephant.
Yeah.
I've got goosebumps thinking about it now as well. I just find that such a powerful, emotive experience. But that's why safety has to be, of course, number one priority, as with all of these activities.
It's a very humbling experience, Ben, spending, it's one thing to do this at a lodge where you can step back into the warmth, or you can go back to your room and be comfortable for the evening. But if you turn this into a full night's outing, it's a whole different kettle of fish. And I'd like to suggest to everybody who goes on one of these events that spend a night out or as late as you possibly can to get the full experience, and just to realize how vast this universe actually is, and how all-encompassing the bush is, and accepting of you being in it, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think we can't draw a distinction between the terrestrial bush and what happens up there. Yeah. I mean, everything is connected. We go on about that in the guiding industry all the time, and it's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the FGASA Level 1 manual, it talks about geology being the beginning of everything. Your rock type is going to dictate your soil and your plants and your animals. I'm going to take it one step further back and say that your geology is dictated by the astronomy, because there are so many influences from, let's say, outer space, and that is one of the chapters in the book as well, of that sort of cultural influence and the environmental influence of celestial factors on the way that our world, if I can say, operates. Everything from the way that the Earth spins to how wind and pressure changes can occur, right the way down to how some animals navigate using the stars during migratory patterns. I mean, there are astronomical links to a whole plethora of ideas within nature, and I've tried to highlight those in the manual as well.
Wasn't there talk, or even scientific evidence, that dung beetles navigate via the stars?
Yeah, that's also that's mentioned in the book. It's not so much, well, I say it is the stars, but it's specifically the Milky Way. They've done experiments that sort of diffuse white streak that you get across the sky is what they use to navigate, rather than specific stars, whereas birds do use specific stars. They've done experiments in planetariums where they've changed the orientation of the night sky at certain times of the year and recorded which way birds are taking off when it's migration time and things. And they found that they can very easily disrupt their navigational sense by changing the orientation of the stars above them.
Do you then ever find that you have guests who come out on one of these events, and as you start, they go, I'm a Leo, what can you tell me about me? Thinking, mixing astrology and astronomy up.
Yeah, well, that's, and you picked up on a very common problem, but a common mistake there. Yes, astronomy versus astrology. So astronomy is the study of space, and astronomy is more of your character traits, your personality traits associated with your zodiacal signs. I can point out your zodiacal signs and explain lots of interesting things about them and some of the history about them, but quite necessarily what that says about you as a person, I'm going to choose to not get too involved in that one.
They just want to know, are they going to travel? Is there going to be money? And are they going to fall in love? Those are always the three questions around that.
That they're going to meet, yes.
So what is the importance of astronomy, Ben?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of it now. I think, you know, the guiding industry especially is always trying to, I don't say reinvent itself, but we have to move with the times, and we have to come up with new experiences. The animals speak for themselves, of course, but we are the conduit of nature and the translator of nature. And it's always been about trying to bring in as many influences as possible. So, as already mentioned, I think it's so important to make people, and especially now, appreciate the bigger picture and look beyond what's sort of just in front of you and dream a little bit and imagine however many, you know, sort of corny phrases that I can come up with, but that's really the crux of it. And I think the other important thing we haven't mentioned in terms of a guide is that, you know, we as guides are educators. That is, yes, we're here to entertain, but ultimately we're here to educate people in conservation and sort of general facts and figures for their own edification. And whereas something like learning about the weight of an elephant is fascinating whilst you're over here, if you live in New York, you're unlikely to bump into an elephant again, hopefully, where that information is particularly relevant to your life. But the beauty of astronomy and the stars is that wherever you go, as long as it's not cloudy, you can see them. And if you as a guide can sort of dismantle some of that fear we spoke about, you know, about that fear of learning about such a large topic, and give people a starting point, it gives them the confidence to go out and do it themselves, and maybe they find a new hobby that they can then share with their friends and family, and especially if families have got kids. Kids love learning about space. I mean, it's what you do. You dream about piloting rocket ships to Mars. So it's a wonderful way to introduce families back together as well.
But is it still the final frontier?
You'll have to ask Captain Kirk.
I don't think he knows anymore either.
No, I think they're still looking.
Ben, you've got a chapter on the study of light. Is there a word, is there a description for the study of light? Is there a scientific term for it?
Well, I mean, to me, astronomy is the study of light. I suppose if you're going to talk about a discipline, we'd be looking more into the area of what we call spectroscopy, which is that ability to split light into its constituent parts. And then a lot of what is discussed in that chapter, I am not about putting that chapter in, but ultimately, if we don't understand what light is, we will never understand astronomy, because we're not going to get to these places. They are too far away. But by analyzing a pinprick of light, it is incredible what can actually be inferred from just that when you understand the physics. And don't be scared, people, that you're not going to learn how to do that. But the principles of how it is done are there. So to spread out the light, and from that you can understand what chemicals are in a star or even a planet's atmosphere, how far away it is, how fast it's traveling. If it's a star, does it have any planets because of dips in brightness and changes in brightness? And there's an amazing amount of information that can be found out just by interpreting light.
How far is a light year? You know, we hear of these terms like Mars is X number of light years away. It'll take us 8 months to get there. But how long is a light year?
Well, the simple answer to it is a very, very long way. I think I can give you a straight answer, but I'm gonna lead up to a little bit with a nice example. Some of you may remember the Voyager space probes that were launched in 1977. They're still the only photos that we have of Neptune, and for the sake of the fact that this is being aired, I shall say Uranus. They're still the only pictures of Neptune and Uranus that we actually have. Now, those probes were launched in 1977, which is what, 20, my math, help me with my math, 34 years ago?
Yeah, somewhere around there. No,
anyway, a long time ago.
33.
33, 34 years, somewhere around there. And the average speed of that thing is 60,000 kilometers an hour. But in those 30-something years, it hasn't even traveled one light day yet.
Wow. All right, that puts it into perspective. So the next time I'm in a traffic jam, I mustn't be too concerned if it takes me an hour to get 2 kilometers down William Nicol.
Well, I'm sure you'll be frustrated, but no, you mustn't be too concerned. So, all right, so the quick answer to your question in kilometers, ballpark, 9.5 trillion kilometers is 1 light year.
Wow.
So let's call it 10 trillion for the sake of math. So that's 10 with 12 zeros after it. That's 1 light year. And to put it into perspective, our closest neighboring star to the sun is 4.23 light years away. So about 40 trillion kilometers to our closest neighbor.
So sort of the number that I don't have in my bank account at the moment.
I don't think, no, probably not for some time either.
Yeah. I have the first digit. After that, I have no more noughts.
Maybe a 0 every now and again when we're lucky, yeah.
Yeah, if we're lucky. Do you have a favorite chapter in the book?
Ooh, you've caught me off guard with that one. I don't know if I have a favorite. I think probably the 2 most important chapters, if I can maybe put it like that to somebody who potentially wants to do this qualification, is the sort of the culture of astronomy, or the importance of astronomy as the chapter is called. We've glossed over it already, but those cultural stories, for example, and again, I don't want to give too much away, but even the concept of time, the days of the week, why we have 7 days in a week, why we have 365 days in a year, why we have 12 months.
Whoa. Can I stop you there for a second, Ben?
Yes.
We have days in a week? We have days with different names? Isn't it just today, yesterday, tomorrow? We don't have weekends anymore? Who knows about months and years?
It's all weekends now. So the cultural or the societal impact of astronomy in terms of things like time, there's stuff in there about Stonehenge and about other monolithic and what we call archaeoastrological sites. And then moving on, as I said, to even ways that the sun, yes, it's a star, but it is the catalyst for the nutrient cycle. It is the catalyst for all the cycles on Earth to work. So very much trying to draw parallels to, again, to that importance of astronomy within the natural world and the culture of humans. And then skipping almost to the last chapter, which is a lot more detail about the constellations, because that's what guides are really going to be hopefully pointing out with laser pointers and things to guess and discussing. So obviously, there are 88 constellations, some of which we can't see from the southern hemisphere, so those aren't listed. And for the sake of my brain and everybody else's, I didn't really think it fair to give detail on 60 constellations. So what I did was I took the 12 zodiac constellations plus another 15 or so of what I would consider fairly obvious prominent constellations, or constellations that have nice stories behind them that can then could be learned and discussed with guests. Sorry.
Yeah. We all know what those little beeps are. I turn mine off, or I just ignore them altogether. You alluded to Stonehenge. What about Adam's calendar at Kaapse?
Yes, Adam's calendar is also in there. For those of you who don't know, Adam's calendar is also an ancient sundial, if you like. There are various estimations of age. The oldest that I have seen is 75,000 years old. If that is true, just think about it, how we wouldn't really consider people 75,000 years ago to have sort of any sort of physics knowledge and understanding of the cosmos, but yet their observations had allowed them to understand time in an amazing way, to the point where I've watched a lot of documentaries and done a lot of research on this sort of thing, and some people are suggesting that, we know that these ancient calendars could give you the dates to within 2 or 3 days just by knowing exactly where the sun rises on the horizon. I mean, that's an amazing feat so long ago.
It is indeed. And remember what happened with the Mayan calendar when we thought the world was going to end just a few years ago.
Exactly, yes, which it didn't, thankfully.
There was a lovely cartoon around that at the time with 2 Mayans. One of them is busy drawing up a calendar, and he gets to that particular date, and his mate says something like, "Let's go for a beer." And he goes, "But I can't finish the calendar." And they go, "That nobody will ever know about this." And that's why it was meant to end when it did, because Bob the Mayan or Mike the Mayan went off to go and have a beer with his buddy rather than finishing off the calendar. Now, this particular book is not available in stores. It's not designed for the general public. This is designed for FGASA, and it's designed for guides to utilize. But one of your branches, or one string to your bow, for want of a better term, is celestial events, where I'm assuming that you would go to a lodge and you would host the evening, or if somebody was having an important birthday party and they felt they were important enough, they would hire you to come and entertain their guests for the evening.
Yeah, precisely. So thank you for mentioning that. So yeah, Celestial Events SA is the company that we registered last year. Due to, I was doing it sort of part-time, just on out of interest, but I was getting so much interest that I felt that there was certainly, again, sorry about the pun, they're unavoidable, but there was definitely the scope to run it at a bigger scale. So that's what we do now. As well as doing the FGASA astronomy training, we also travel to lodges and guest houses. To do what we call our night sky safaris. And we take the telescope behind with and laser pointers and everything else, and we give probably about a 2-hour extravaganza, if we can call it that. So we cover a little bit of everything. We do chit chat, we point out the constellations, we discuss, we do look at stuff through binoculars, we do the telescope, we do a bit of photography, and you can take photos of Saturn and the rings with your cell phone through the telescope. Or take pictures of the moon in close up. I mean, it's great what we can do out there. And to be honest, you have to shut me up. I'll stay out there all night. So normally the chef gets angry with me prior to dinner. But that's one aspect which is going very well, certainly. So we travel to the lodge and undertake everything and entertain the guests on the lodge's behalf. And then we also offer stuff with school groups. We're in discussion with various schools about astronomy clubs at the moment. Certainly considering doing an astronomy club for people that are interested in the Nelspruit area, which is where we are based, but obviously we do travel. And yeah, lots of other ideas. We up until everything rather ground to a halt, so a couple of months ago, we were in June, did have a 3-night astrophotography workshop weekend planned locally, which is currently on hold. So to allow, where we teach people how to use their cameras and do the post-processing, and potentially even give people the opportunity to take photographs with their DSLR camera through the telescope and get some pretty spectacular images. That's quite advanced, so we probably do tiers of training on that. So yeah, it's a bit frustrating. We've got all these ideas, but until we know what we can and can't do, we're kind of twiddling thumbs at the moment. But yes, we have a whole array of astronomical services that we offer.
But I suppose, Ben, you could use this time to sort of tweak those things so that you know that the next time you go out, if you use this setting or that setting, you can attach this camera with that setting, so that it's one less stumbling block, or not stumbling block, that's the wrong word to use, but one less technical aspect to be concerned about.
Yeah, one less operator error to worry about. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're taking the time here to, we're currently developing the online training so that we can at least do the theory content of the manual in a scenario like this through Zoom with a PowerPoint presentation and so on and so forth. But the practical stuff, as much as we would love to be able to do it online, you really need to get out there. But obviously what works in our favor is very small groups, outside, minimal contact, easy to social distance, and very little equipment. So I don't want to go into that now. We're in discussions of what we can and can't do, and hopefully in the next few weeks we will find out more. And anyone who's interested, please have a look at our social media feeds and the website, and we'll keep you appraised as soon as we can.
Is there any minimal qualification from a FGASA guide in order to do this particular course?
Well, originally it started out said as an SKS, which was only available to what was the old level 3, now the professional field guide. But I had such good interest from FGASA, and a lot of guides were keen to know more about it, that after a few discussions we decided to make it available to anybody who has the old level 1 or the new apprentice field guide status. So that is the only prerequisite for now.
Okay.
Obviously down the line, I'd like to look into offering training for just the average person who has an interest. And that's something that we're also going to be looking at down the line. So not specifically about this manual, but just for the person sitting at home who also would like to learn more.
Okay, so there may be hope for me yet. In the meantime, the manuals are available from FGASA directly or from you?
No, we've done this very much with FGASA. So we've written the syllabus on FGASA's behalf. The books and the workbooks are available directly from them. I don't have access to those myself. Obviously, I can put you in contact, but you need to speak to the bookshop at FGASA to order the manual and the workbooks through them. We will then handle, if people want the FGASA training, then that's where we will come in, be it either an official course or even if people want to just have FGASA members want to have a one-night introductory just to understand the basics and the navigational to how to navigate the skies, then we can bespoke design any type of training required.
Okay. Ben, there's just so much to talk about in this book. I want to come back to you at a later stage, and I want to talk constellations specifically, but I think that's a whole nother chat. And I'd like to end off our little chat this afternoon with a quote that's on the back of this book by Stephen Hawking. We all know who he was. And the quote is, "Look up to the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist." So thanks to Stephen Hawking. Thanks to Ben Coley from, you haven't, I've got to do I'll do my Graham Norton and then you can do yours.
Oh, yes.
So if you want to find out more about the people that I've interviewed, or if you want to find out about my blog, you can go to this very address, which is www.travelandthings.co.za, or you can go to Ben's, which is Celestial Events, and you can find him at www.celestialevents.sa.com. Ben, thank you so much for chatting to me. It's been wonderful to catch up, and we will be talking again in the not too distant future. My guest for this afternoon on In Conversation With was Ben Coley from, he says, from Celestial Events. Phew, dug myself out of that one. Ben, once again, thanks very much for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks very much, David. Pleasure to chat to you.